Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Morning Glory video. In today's video, we are going to be asking and answering one simple question that is a hot topic in the Guard community right now. Is Pure Infantry Guard dead going into 10th edition 40k? And with that spicy intro, it's time to stop messing around, fix our bayonets, go over the top and dive right into today's video. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, if I stick a chair on the ceiling, is it still a chair? I mean, you can't sit on it, right? But aside from that, you're probably also thinking about how Guard is going to work going into the new edition of Warhammer 40k. Now, it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, we simply don't know yet. There's a lot about 10th edition that's still under wraps, and we're only just starting to be able to put together the pieces that will allow us to understand how this edition is going to work and play out. However, with a new edition, you can guarantee that there are going to be some big changes, and how you run your Guard army right now is very unlikely to be the same way you're going to run it in the new edition. For example, when I was playing in 7th edition, it was pure infantry all the way. It was a matter of necessity. Going into 8th edition, hybrid Guard, even mechanized forces became very powerful. And then moving over to 9th edition, we tended to have a whole focus on skew lists within the Guard, some pure infantry or pure tanks, both of which were equally viable. With the new Guard codex we've got right now, it seems to be that a focus on elite Guard infantry such as Kazakin and the Lord Solar is the main way to go. What I'm trying to demonstrate is that 40k is an ever-evolving game, an ever-changing game, and so whatever happens, you should be prepared for the fact that your army is probably going to be a bit different going into a new edition. But the thing is, and I totally get this, and I understand this, change is scary. And especially where we don't have all the answers, humans tend to start filling in the gaps with their imagination. And sometimes this can be their hopes and dreams, and sometimes this can be their nightmares. And I have heard some chit, and dare I say chat, around the Imperial Guard community water cooler. And there are a lot of people out there who are kind of worried right now. And there's one thing particularly that has got the Guard community concerned, and that is the fate of our infantry corps and of our pure infantry armies. Now, very brief side note here, but for those of you that don't know, Pure Infantry Guard or Horde Guard or World War I style Guard is one of the most beloved and favourite ways of running a themed Guard force that also actually tends to be pretty effective on the tabletop. And the concept behind this style of play is pretty simple. We have more men than you have bullets. It's all about boys over toys. We are going to drown the enemy in our blood and just flood the board with as many bodies as possible. Why would I spend loads of points on a single Imperial Guard tank when I could get 20, 30 or maybe even 40 infantry for the same price point? Now, not only does this tactic actually somehow work in 40k, where essentially it's a numbers game, so he who rolls the most dice will generate the most opportunities, shall we say, but it also allows Guard players to really embrace the feel of the faction. The Guard is often described as billions of infantrymen fighting side by side, and there are factions that really lean into that aesthetic, such as the Mordian Iron Guard and the Death Court of Krieg. So it lets you have your cake and eat it. You can be a fluff player and also be a crunch player, and I personally love running Pure Infantry Guard for that exact reason. It's aesthetically very pleased to me. I think it creates a really cinematic vibe on the tabletop, but also I've taken Pure Infantry Guard to many tournaments and I've done very well with it. As a result, and taking all this into account, it's not hard to see why Pure Infantry Guard is beloved in the Astra Militarum community. And many people who have Guard armies don't simply consider themselves to be Guard players, but specifically, they consider themselves to be pure infantry commanders. And I would argue that this subgroup of players tends to be one of the most passionate components of the Astra Militarum community. And it's these pure Infantry Guard players that have recently become very concerned about 10th edition based upon the information that has been released by Games Workshop up until this point. Now, there are a number of legitimate reasons why the Guard community is concerned about the future of their infantry. One of the biggest ones was what Games Workshop said at Adepticon as part of the 10th edition reveals. Games Workshop said that going forward in 10th edition, you would only be allowed to use 3 of each datasheet unless it had the battle line keyword, at which point you would be allowed to take 6 of them in your Guard army. Now, initially, a lot of people panicked and they were like, does that mean I can only take 6 troop choices? Does that mean my army is going to be limited to a maximum of 60 Guard infantry? That would be catastrophic, and overnight, that would just kill pure infantry Guard. Now, that very well may end up being how it works, but I am not totally convinced. You see, Games Workshop said it was 6 of each datasheet if it has battle line, not 6 of each battlefield role. And remember, things like troops and elites and heavy support, all those old concepts that we've been familiar with for 40k for so long, they're going away. They're gone. There's no such thing as troops anymore. There's now battle line and there's not battle line. And I think it's a pretty safe bet that what's got the troops role right now is going to become battle line in 10th edition. I mean, Games Workshop has all but confirmed that in recent Warhammer community articles. That means that straight away you can look at your new Guard Codex and be like, okay, well, what have I got in my troops selection at the moment? I have got infantry squads, I've got Catachan squads, I've got Cadian squads, and I have got Death Court of Krieg. If I'm allowed to take 6 of each one of those datasheets, it means I actually have access to 240 battle line infantry in 10th edition. That's pretty good, right? Well, here's the thing. We don't know. Like I said at the beginning of the video, we don't have all of the information out there. And what is really tricky, and I think a big mistake a lot of people have been making about 10th edition, is they have been assuming it is a continuation of 9th, like the move from 8th to 9th edition was, like the move from 6th to 7th edition was. I don't think that's the case. 10th edition is a hard reset. It is obvious to me. GW is redesigning the game from the ground up. We've already seen things like Universal Special Rules come back. Right now, our Death Corps Krieg infantry could be considered troops, but we don't know if GW is going to take a look at that datasheet and go, you know what? They feel like a cut above your standard guardsmen. They feel definitely more elite. We're not going to make them battle line. We want them to feel special. Now, I appreciate that some people would consider that to be panicking and maybe overthinking and worrying about the situation, but there is a precedent for that kind of behavior from Games Workshop. Remember, Space Marine Scouts used to be a troop choice in the Space Marine Army right up until the current codex, and then they became an elite choice, and that fundamentally altered how that unit had worked for decades. But on top of this, it's not just in-game changes that could determine the fate of the pure infantry playstyle. It's also what's going to happen in real life with what units are available from Games Workshop. One of my biggest concerns, and something that I think Games Workshop is lining up to do going into 10th edition, is they are going to remove the basic nondescript infantry squad from the Guard roster. Now, some of you are going to raise a skeptical eyebrow at that, and I don't blame you. I mean, infantry squads are infantry squads. We've always had them. One special, one heavy weapon. How could Games Workshop change that? Well, remember that Games Workshop has a policy of if they don't sell a box for it, they don't make rules for it. And Games Workshop no longer sells normal Guardsmen infantry squads. The old Cadian models back from the early 2000s, and even the Brood Brother options that you can get for Gene Cult, those are no longer produced and sold by Games Workshop. In fact, the only Guard infantry that you can buy officially from GW is Cadian Shock Troop squads, Death Corps Krieg squads, and Catachan Jungle Fighters. So if Games Workshop doesn't sell a box labeled infantry squad, then I think there's a real risk that Games Workshop is going to remove that from the Guard roster going into 10th edition. I mean, maybe I'm overthinking this and I'm looking too much into the detail and I'm seeing things that aren't actually there. But if you go and take a look at your new 9th edition book and you flick to the page which has got the datasheet for the infantry squad, you'll notice something rather strange is missing. it doesn't have a picture. They got a picture for the Cadians and the Catachans and the Krieg, but they don't actually have a picture for the basic infantry squad. And I don't know why, but that just seems like a bad omen to me. And if we take this a step further and we have a think about what other units might not make it from 9th to 10th edition, then it's not a big stretch of the imagination to think that Catachans are going to go to the big green jungle in the sky. I mean, I don't want to upset my Catachan bros, but let's be honest. Those models are ancient and they look kind of terrible and goofy. They have a certain nostalgic charm about them, but you put an old school Catachan next to one of the new Cadian models, you really think Games Workshop's going to keep selling your Catachans? I mean, no way. Those things are definitely on borrowed time. It amazes me that Games Workshop got rid of the old Cadians before they got rid of the old Catachans, but that's a story for another time. But if we then take this into account and we go, okay, Games Workshop's going to stop selling infantry squads, they're not going to make rules for them, and then Games Workshop might stop selling Catachans because they're really old, then that means that we've gone from having 4 data sheets of infantry down to possibly 2. However, before you all go off and renounce the Emperor and you decide to commit the cardinal sin of going and playing Age of Sigmar, don't do it! Young conscript, that way lies madness. I want to be clear with you guys. I want to let you guys know something, which is I actually think that them removing those data sheets is a worst case scenario. And realistically, I don't see it happening. The reason I believe that is because 10th edition is already written, guys. It's already all locked in. If we're hearing about it, it's because Games Workshop is just marketing it now and they're dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And if they sell Jungle Fighters right now, I think that means your Jungle Fighters are going to be safe going into 10th edition. So I think the Catachans are okay. So all of you guys with your red bandanas, you can breathe a sigh of relief. With the infantry squad, I could see it going either way, but personally, I have faith that they're going to stick around. And the reason for that is, I think that Games Workshop is actually relatively in tune with their community now. Back in the day, they had no social media presence and things dropped out the fucking sky. But now Games Workshop is more in tune with the community than they ever have been. They actually use social media. They do reveals. They do listen to the community. They do release FAQs, all this kind of stuff. And I think that they know that if they got rid of infantry squads and they were like, right, everyone's got to be Cadian, Krieg, or Catachan now, that would piss off so many people. And it would cause a lot of people to go, well, I just don't want to play Imperial Guard anymore if I don't get to play with my dudes. And I think for Games Workshop to placate all of the other minor regiments, the Mordians, the Talar, the Steel Legion, the Frostroians, all they need to do is leave that infantry squad datasheet in. And if they do, then it's going to make a lot of the Guard community happy and they'll just poodle along, going straight into 10th edition, no dramas. And I think if they remove it, there is no positive to them doing that. I think all it does is piss off a load of players. And I don't see Games Workshop doing that for no gain. So to answer the question that I posed at the beginning of the video, no. I don't think Pure Infantry Guard is going to be dead in 10th edition. At the very least, we should have 3 datasheets to play with. The Catachans, the Krieg, and the Cadians. And there's a good chance we'll still have the basic infantry squad as well. On top of that, we'll be able to supplement our battle line infantry forces with things like Kazakin and Scions. I'm not certain yet how they're going to make pure Scions work. Maybe they'll say if your whole army is Militarum Tempestus, then Scions become battle line. Kind of like what they did with the Scions in the current 9th edition book. How if you take pure Scions in your army, they become troops. But either way, I think Guard are going to have access to loads of data sheets. And if we just look at what we've got available right now, even if we're limited to 6 of each data sheet, we have actually access to 30 10-man squads we can include in a 10th edition army. We've got 6 of each of the battle line ones and 3 of each of the... In fact, I would be so bold as to say that Pure Infantry Guard is far from dead. Nay, it might even get a new lease on life going into 10th edition because we are losing the force organization chart. That means we no longer have to try and decide what troop choices we're going to take in what detachment. All of that stuff is gone. And if there is no force org chart and it's just a case of you can only take so many of each data sheet, then you might see Pure Infantry Guard players finally able to stretch out again, no longer confined by the detachment system. We might start seeing guard armies with 200, 250, or even 300 infantry hitting the table. It's all going to depend on what the points values are for those units. But no force org chart plus more data sheets than ever of 10-man squads equals potentially huge guard hordes coming for 10th edition. Now, I know a lot of you guys are going to be pretty happy to hear that, and I am quite excited for what 10th edition holds. In my personal experience, hard resets of editions have only ever led to an improvement in the game. The change from 7th to 8th was great. The change from 2nd to 3rd was fantastic. So a hard reset tends to mean good things for the game. But there is a small fly in the ointment. And I don't normally like ending a video on a more negative note. But one of the things that actually annoys me about 10th edition, potentially, is that if I want to run pure infantry, or if I want to run more than 60 line infantry, I've got to start taking this weird patchwork of regiments. I play Mordian Iron Guard. I like the Mordian Iron Guard. I just want to be able to run them. If I want to run lots of infantry and I suddenly got to start taking this patchwork quilt of Cadians and Catachans and Krieg, it's just not going to feel great. And it's also going to be a lot more for me to manage. Like, I'm going to have to remember that these 60 infantry are the Cadians and these 60 infantry are the Catachans. And, well, unless I start using vastly different models on the board, which means the army's not going to look as cool or cohesive, it's going to look like a random collection of models, it's going to be a lot for me to manage. And I've got to have to remember which unit is which. And when I start taking casualties, and maybe I'm reduced down to like a single Voxcaster guy, I've got to remember that Voxcaster guy is a Catachan dude, or if he's a Cadian dude. It's just going to be a bit fiddly. And so I do hope that they will introduce mechanics. I hope that they bring platoons back, which will allow us to, say, take 6 battle line units, but for each one of those battle line slots, instead you can take like 2 or 3 infantry squads or 2 or 3 Cadian squads. That would be really cool if they introduced a platoon mechanic or ability. But all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Are you excited for 10th edition or worried? Do you think that Pure Infantry Guard will be powerful, or do you think we're going to struggle? Do you worry about taking the patchwork quilt of regiments? Let me know your thoughts and feelings down in that comment section. If you have enjoyed today's video, make sure you smash that like button like your big titty Eldar girlfriend, and also subscribe to never miss an episode. If you have found today's video particularly interesting or enjoyable, then please consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. By becoming a channel member or Patreon, you will gain access to the Mordian Glory Discord, which is an online community of over 1,000 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We talk about tactics and army lists and painting and hobbying. We even got a meme section, and of course, we are chatting about all of those juicy 10th edition rumors. And I'd just like to take a moment to say a big thank you to all of the latest supporters. So a massive thank you to Brother of Titans, Philip C., Riley, Anthony, David Stoffy, Drake Barfog, Jeff Brew, Polarman, Chris J., Sebastian Bazuk, Giorgio Toth, Alex DeMars, Alunda Lorenzo, Agent Flint, Christian Glover, Baptiste Wallandmere, Vika Razia, Malman, Job van Stiphout, Joseph Palandio, Jeffrey Walker, Teach, Rixus, Cheeky Breeky, Andrea Bonavia, DD Lion X, Arn Van Roland, Kel Hund, Sarge in Charge, Kreb Crawley, Alan Rickett, and Groot Farmer. Thank you to all of you guys for becoming channel members. Thank you for doing your part. And I also want to do a quick thank you to the latest Patreon supporters as well. So a massive thank you to Philip PK, Ebola, Steely, David J. Kelly, Colonel E111, and Jack Attack. Thank you guys for becoming Patreon supporters. And last but certainly not least, I would like to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreon supporters. These are the War Masters, the people that have truly gone above and beyond the Call of Duty. So a massive thank you to Alan Blunt III, Bonbon Vert, Mark Panconi, Ridemaster 134-1, Ross Miller, Swordfish Trombone, John Stubbs, Diesel Fox, and August Varney. Honestly, guys, a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your generous contribution makes a huge, huge difference and is a big part of how I'm able to do Mordian Glory full time. I hope you've all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching. And of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.